Alright, guys. They're testing the waters on this. They leak it through a tertiary source and they wait to find out what happens to that source. All this talk about how 50 some people have been killed. There have been several sources lately that say it's time to repeal the Second Amendment. I understand it's the Rolling Stones, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that. This is one of those things you don't put, especially in any pop magazine article or anything else. Why it's time to repeal the Second Amendment. Hang on, they're hustling me, folks. Hang on. They're hustling me good. They're trying. Hang on. This guy teaches constitutional law. Basically says, I revere the document when it's used to further social justice and other things. So he goes into his little thing. And he says, we need to say loud and clear the Second Amendment must be repealed. This is coming from the Rolling Stones magazine, so they're trying to put it out there as hip and new and conscientious because they talk about social justice. And basically saying, this guy said, the founders of the Constitution are wrong. So he's a fucking statist is what he is. Not even going to even bother to read you any other bits than that. This is what I'm going to read you, ladies and gentlemen. This is what you tell anybody and everybody who dares to believe under any circumstances it is their right under any authority to say anything about your Second Amendment rights or your family's Second Amendment rights. One, every person should be counted as a police officer or some kind of entitled authority to have guns. That went out the way in public education years ago, unfortunately. But this is what has not. You ready for this? Here it comes. Here we go, gentlemen and ladies, and anybody else listening. This is what you tell them. Our government signed this July 4th of 1776. They believed it was necessary then, and goddamn it, it is now necessary probably again. Probably. Let's see if you can name the document, ladies and gentlemen. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with uncertain alienable rights, or unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, not by the governed to the fucking people. I apologize, I'll read it here on out. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness, produce indeed will dictate that government, long established, should not be changed for the light and transient causes. And accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpation, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government and to produce new guards for the future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies. Well, you get the idea here. But it continues, and to provide new guards for their future security. I'm sorry, I skipped one. All right, here we go. From the colonies part. And such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of their present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And it lists the ones they had during the time. Ladies and gentlemen, the only thing stopping them from taking away all the homeless, from taking away all the elderly, taking away anyone who does not look their part, or anything else. And we've seen this in hundreds of countries worldwide in the last 50-some years. Enough. Once the guns are gone, they bring the genocide from the governments to the people. If they repeal the Second Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, which I know they probably won't, and that this is just one story on the internet, I understand that, then those political bands need to be disbanded and new government instituted under the authority of the United States people, not of this DC corporation or the United States corporation or the fucking Vatican that owns it all. We will no longer have a corporation telling us what to do or how to do it. This is the thing you tell those ladies and gentlemen who tell you that they want to repeal the Second Amendment. First off, we wouldn't have to repeal it if everybody had the ability to have a just education where they could protect themselves and basically get issued into rotations for the police and emergency services. Hell, that would be your general education purposes right there, is to protect every human being in your area by going into a rotationary period and doing your local community service. A couple days a month, you'd be a police officer. A couple days a month, you'd be a fireman. You'd get called up when you get called up, and then you'd go back to your day job. There'd be 2 or 3 or 4 dozen people in the community, state, etc., which would have that job all year round. The rest would be filled with volunteers or rotationary people. I know we could work it out the difference, but that way every single human being and anyone capable of bearing arms, ladies and gentlemen, be it hybrids or anybody else, would have their Second Amendment protected, because they would be a certified police officer, a certified fireman, and all the public service jobs thereof they would be certified in under a public education system that would give a flying fuck about them. And you know I'm right. That's why they're doing this, because they think we're cattle, because they've been screwing us blind for the past 70 years. And if they were to just start educating us the way they should, the Second Amendment would be yay. Well, we're all certified, so we can keep our guns, yay. And we all have stake in the community, so yay. And that would be that. And then because you do your rotations, you get a general basic income from your city, state, and federal government, along with hazard pay if you get injured or something. And then you go back to your daily job after that, ladies and gentlemen. That is how I do see the future, especially if this pot boils over. So I highly doubt they will ever dare to repeal the Second Amendment. When it does, ladies and gentlemen, I would probably suggest you get the hell out of major cities, because you don't want to be involved in any of that. Thank you. And whether or not you do what you need to do, if and when it would be repealed, well, that's up to you. But you've heard how the system has wronged me over the last couple of years. These guys have been in power. It would not be such a horrible thought to join some group or another to go in and arrest these guys and drag them out kicking and screaming and put their nose to the fire, etc., 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 and do unto them as they've done to us. But if and when they do repeal that Second Amendment, ladies and gentlemen, you bet your sweet ass all hell everywhere is to break loose. And it isn't about, oh, well, these guys are good and those guys are bad. Nope. At that point, it's protect those you love and do what you need to do to keep the family healthy and alive. And whoever shows up and does what, you handle it. But like I said, I doubt they'll ever repeal it, but that very document, ladies and gentlemen, from the Rolling Stones, which is a magazine I actually very much like. I'm kind of a hard rock metalist enthusiast myself, and that document, when I saw it, pains me. But this is the response to that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.